Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be, and I welcome you to the Nancy Ferrari Show, which is your opportunity to tune into spirited, soulful, and inspiring conversations with my guests who share their expertise and life experiences, and together we share what's real, relevant, and relatable to you. I am Nancy Ferrari, your host, and very excited for my show today. With me today is Steve Noble, who is the author of one of my new favorite books, which is titled Personal Transitions: Beyond the Comfortable into the Real. Steve is known in the body, mind, spirit community in the UK as the founder of the hugely successful London-based nonprofit Center for Contemporary Spiritual and Personal Development Alternatives. Trained as a coach and NLP practitioner, Steve is a popular workshop and retreat leader, as well as a sought-after speaker. He also works at the London-based College of Psychic Studies, and needless to say, we have much to talk about, and you'll know why when we start diving into his, like as I've said, one of my new favorite books. And at this time, I warmly welcome Steve Noble to my show. Good evening to you out there in the UK. How are you?
Hi, Nancy. I'm good, thank you. It's it's early evening, 5:15 here. But it's good. London's good. London is, it's kind of not too, it's still warm and bright, so it's all good here.
Well, that's good to hear, because sometimes I have I'm amassing quite a few friends in England lately, and also having relatives in Finland. You're up there, and so sometimes you could have a rainy summer, and hard to believe we're in August now, and time is going so quickly. And actually, as I always like to say, everything happens in divine order, and this is a month of transitions for many people, especially for parents whose children are either maybe starting school, or they're leaving the nest to go off to college. And I kind of go with what is going on within the environment. And so I just overhear conversations, and also when you go shopping, they're shopping for school supplies or things for their dorm, and this tends to be a very emotional time for people. So but within your story, I would love for you to share, and we talked about this before we went on air, and maybe one of these, there could be people who could relate to it, your story. And I know when my personal awakening happened, which was in 2009, and it's been an amazing journey, especially through the transitions. So if you will, I would love for you to share a little bit more about you and what you experienced, and then get into this marvelous book of yours, Personal Transitions.
Okay, well, I've been through a number of transitions in my life, like marriage, divorce, parents dying. I've been through 3 big careers, where I was in a career for 10 years. I had these kind of 10-year slots. I had these kind of things going on. But when it was about 2009, actually, the end of 2009, I was approaching this, what was, for me, the biggest transition of my life, I think, up to this point. And in early 2010, it really kicked off. My whole life started to turn inside out, upside down. My career, which I absolutely loved, which was this director of Alternatives, which is a not-for-profit in London, hosting all these amazing authors like Eckhart Tolle and Deepak Chopra and Byron Katie type of authors. I didn't actually found it, but I was a director there for 13 years, so it's been going for about 33 years now. So I knew it was time to leave this job that I absolutely loved, and also my relationship with a woman I absolutely loved seemed to be coming to an end, and the home that we created together, which was just an amazing home, was also something that I felt I had to leave. So all the big anchors in my life, which was career I loved, person I loved, and home I loved, was all going to go, and that was hard. I mean, I think it's harder if you actually love something to let it go than if you kind of hate a job, or hate the person you're with, or So these were really tough, and I thought, oh my goodness, I could feel this big shift coming, there are all kinds of astrological shifts going on in my life. There was Chiron return happening, if anybody out there knows about astrology. And in the period of where that Chiron return happened, I wrote 2 books and had 2 books published, which was quite phenomenal because I'd had 2 books written and published in the previous 10 years, so it was really shaking me up. In 2014, when I was coming out of the transition, I had the Grand Cross, the big alignment, and that kicked me off again. So the last 5 years have been the most incredible journey. It's been the most painful journey. It started off with what I believe to be a Kundalini experience, and just to say, I never believed in Kundalini experiences. I'd read about them and I'd heard yoga teachers talking about them, but I never believed in it because I'd done a lot of tantra and a lot of yoga, and I didn't believe in any force going to come up and blast me open. But that's exactly what happened, and my whole energy field was kind of shaking. It was actually during a tantra exercise that I'd done many times before, but with this one particular person, it kind of blew me open, and I wondered what on earth is that. And then after that, 2 or 3 months later, I kind of dived into this dark night of the soul experience for several months, which was really dark and difficult and beyond depression. It was like everything lost its meaning. I felt no longer on track. I felt disconnected from source, from my intuition. I felt I was lost in the world. And also, when all these changes were going on, I felt the very time I need my intuition and my connection to source and guidance, it was gone. So I was really like on the cross saying, God, why have you forsaken me, type, that kind of thing. It's a real initiation. And I thought I wasn't going to survive it. I actually did on a couple of occasions look down. I write about it in the book, really, but there was a couple of occasions I looked down at the River Thames, and I was in such pain at this time that I thought if I jump in, that will be the end of it. But of course I didn't. I'm here, on the other side of this transition. So it was very difficult. And when I was researching the book, I thought, well, I won't just write about my story. I want to find out how many other people are going through this. And I found loads of people going through massive shifts. Another thing I write in the book, I was in a festival a few years ago, just when I was finishing the book, and somebody said to me, what are you up to now? And I said, I'm writing this book on transitions. And she started laughing. And I said, why? You've gone through one. And she said, well, isn't everyone? And I was like, what? Well, maybe. I don't know if everyone is, but maybe everyone in our circles is, sure. So that was very briefly my experience of it. I mean, I've really condensed 5 years into like 3 minutes, but there you are.
Well, very relatable, to say the least. And we talked about that. And as I'm starting to expand my I guess the word is curiosity into astronumerology, and in addition to working within the soul, you can't deny it. And when I just had a conversation with a couple friends yesterday, and I said, sometimes the best thing for me to say, it's the mystery of faith, that things are happening. Like when back 6-7 years ago, I would not have known what a Kundalini experience is, what a shaman, for gosh sakes, when I went to Sedona on my journey to find some answers and get started on my path. I didn't even know what namaste meant. I just said it back.
Right.
It sounded good. It made me feel good. But, these are powerful experiences. And like we shared before, our first transition is coming into the world, and, from the darkness of the womb into the light. And then people will just kind of start to go, oh, okay, now I get it. And I think what stood out to me when I started reading your book, you wrote, there's nothing obvious about transitions. They can sneak up on us without us realizing, and they can begin in strange ways and be accompanied by an odd undercurrent of tension. So sometimes we know there's a transition, like I said in the intro, that there's, people going to college and stuff, but it's those unexpecteds that can pull the rug right out from under us.
Yeah, I mean, the ones where you're going to college or you're dating someone and there's obviously marriage on the horizon, or there's a kind of job offer in the in your email kind of thing. They're kind of, well, okay, they're one level of transitions, but another level which I write in the book is what I call well, in a chapter called A Question of Soul, it's really where your soul or the deeper self, and I don't want people to get hooked up too much on the name, because people might call it your inner Buddha nature or your soul or your higher self, but there's something deep inside of us which is our kind of or core authentic self, which might be saying to us a number of things. One of which might be saying, and it doesn't say it in a conversation, oh, by the way, Steve, I think you're off track 10 degrees. Can you just go a little more east here, But it might be trying to say, you're off track, get back on track. And we're, with the language of the soul, which is not kind of, sent to us by an email, we're trying to work it out. Well, there's a kind of feeling or signs in the around us that maybe this isn't the right way, there's another way, but which way is it? I don't know. There's that kind of period of what I call tension, where there's a growing tension that something's not quite right, which is usually a sign of a transition. It's an inner tension. And I make a distinction in tension because I think there's superficial tension, which is what we do when we go and buy a washing machine. My washing machine's broken. Oh, I feel a bit tense about it. I buy a new one and it's sorted. Or I'm hungry. I go and have lunch. It's sorted. But this is a very deep layer of tension that you can't sort by getting a new girlfriend or buying a new house or buying a new car. And that's why I think when people find they're going through a transition and they kind of start looking around for ways to sort out what is usually the superficial tension. Well, and when it hit me in 2009, I felt this rising tension in me that something's not right. I started delegating things in my work. I went on holiday. I started doing sports. I took a coach. I did a load of things, and basically the tension never went away. And that's kind of a sign that transition's happening. We kind of try to move the furniture around our house without, doing anything major. Or the metaphor I often use is we have our yacht parked in a nice safe harbour with a nice view of the sun, and we move it across the harbour to the other side, go, well, the sun's a bit better over here. I'm sorted now. I've done all I need to do. But really the ocean is calling us out to sea. And unless we kind of take the risk, the transition and the tension is going to keep building. And what often happens at this stage is we go, there's the ocean out there calling, but no, the harbour here is quite nice, and the food's good, and the company's nice, and why should I risk all that and go out to open sea?
And that's where we're in our comfort zone. Yeah. And like you said, I'm just envisioning changing all the furniture, thinking it's going to make a difference, and you still feel the same. It's much more deeper than this. And so for my listeners out there, when as there's some that may be feeling this, there's a lot going on energetically right now, and we could talk for hours about that, with what planets are in retrograde. Last week's blue full moon, holy cow, that last week was a challenge. But you know what? To me, it's when you're aware of our environment, that has helped me to kind of release if I'm feeling some tension, because I've grown to examine things and also what's this telling me, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to really do what I'm being called forth to, just kind of relax with it. But then there's those, as you refer to, the rough transitions, and that's when we move the furniture around and it's still not right. How do you what would you share with my listeners? What steps to take to start moving through, and at the end of the day, I would say, when I feel peace and I feel happiness within, then I know that I'm in alignment.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
That's unfortunate. We can't feel that through a transition. However, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, as they say.
There's always light. And every transition comes as a great gift. It's a kind of challenging journey. It's a heroic journey, like Joseph Campbell would say. And often we're called to, take these heroic journeys in life. And whichever path we take, in the book I talk about 3 paths of transition. Each one has its own challenges and nuances, and each one has its own gifts. Each one is there to wake us up in some way, to get us back on track. The soul is kind of saying to us, you're here for a reason that you chose before you incarnated, but you've forgotten it. Now wake up to it. And we're going, what is the reason? I don't know. Have I got a purpose? I don't know. But there are all kinds of clues around what we're meant to do. And what we're not meant to do is get too distracted by TV, addictive shopping, all these kind of things. There's lots of distractions, that kind of take us off our path. And the key is really resistance is probably the key in which path we take, because there's two types of resistance. There's inner resistance and outer resistance. Now, the inner resistance is all our ego structures, all I don't think I'm good enough, I don't think I can do this, I can't cope, I'm not the type of person, there's that film and the book The Hobbit where I'm not the type of person to go on an adventure, when the wizard comes knocking at my door. There's all that inner stuff that we can process and work on in workshops and various ways. But there's the outer resistance that comes through structures around us like families and peer systems and pressure groups and the culture we're born in that says you can do this and you can't do that, so, or local communities. So it's all of that. So if there's someone who has found, they've kind of liberated themselves, have a very good support network, has been working on themselves, when a transition comes, then they probably have some insight into their own stuff. They probably loosened up the external, resistance structures so they have more movement. So they have a greater opportunity perhaps to go down what I call the smooth route. Now the smooth route is where we feel the calling and we go, I know I've got to change something. Maybe I've got to leave this job. Maybe I've got to leave this marriage. I don't know why, and it's not, I'm not suggesting that people should just without any thinking, just jump into, leaving a marriage or leaving a job. But it's usually a time of reflection and thinking about it and signs that saying whether it's right or not, and eventually you take the step and you leave. And that's often a step onto a smooth path. Now, the other way of doing that is, I'm an employee and I want to start my own business. And then there's a step towards something. So you're not running away from something. You're actually stepping, I'm going to start the business and there's challenges. That often is the smooth path because we've taken a step, we've overcome the resistance, so we've initiated the journey. The rough one is where the kind of ocean kind of comes in and gets us in a way. The resistance is holding us. No, I'm not going to move. I'm not going to leave this marriage. I'm staying in this 9-to-5 job, whatever. And then the life pulls us out, and often there's a catalytic kind of experience. So a catalyst might enter in the form of a lover, which is what happened to me. A woman came in and blew my life up. It might come in as a redundancy. It might come as an accident. It might come as any number of things that actually catalyzes the whole thing, and our old life starts to blow up and unwind. And so that's a very different type of journey because we didn't want to go on the journey. We've kind of resisted it, and so that's much tougher. But it also has its gifts. It's like being shipwrecked, like you're getting pulled out to sea and then you get a bit shipwrecked,
Well, it's like that movie, The Life of Pi, which you do refer to.
Oh, yeah.
One of my favorite movies. I saw it on an airplane at first, and then I said, when I get home, I'm going to get the DVD and, really watch it.
Yeah. Yeah, beautiful filmed, yes. And just the way they shot it was fantastic. But
yes,
the third path is what I call super rough transition, and that is really like Life of Pi. That's being kind of adrift on the ocean with a tiger in your boat. It's kind of like that. And now that is something that might never happen to you in this lifetime, but it might happen to you. If it happens, it usually only happens once, because when you hit that journey, it's like the most incredibly rough, difficult time. That was the one I went through the last 5 years, an incredibly difficult time. But there's a kind of equation that the more difficult the time, the greater the gifts on the other side. I kind of knew the theory when I went through it, but I kind of went, yeah, right. I don't know if this is really going to apply to this transition. It's too tough. But on the other side, it really has been incredible, the kind of awakening and openings I've been having and experiencing. Mm-hmm. So if anybody's going through a transition, basically, if you're approaching, there's a time of tension, and what really helps is reflection, getting away from it all, trying to take some time out, trying to reflect, what is this all about? Getting kind of, if there's somebody you trust who's a clear mirror for you, a coach, a friend, go and chat to them. That can be very helpful. But what you don't want is the kind of committee of people telling you what you should be doing. Mm-hmm. You want people who can really tune into your higher self and go, you know what, this is what I'm getting for you. But that you want them to be the clearer the channel, the better. If they've got all their stuff in the way, you're going to get a lot of garbled messages back, and that's not going to help you at all.
No, it's more confusion.
Yeah.
For sure, and that's what I share with people. if you're going to put it out there, especially nowadays with social media, imagine the variety of responses you're going to receive. And someone that you definitely have a close connection with, and that you trust. And you know what the best thing of all is? Someone who just listens.
Yeah.
Because when you can talk, right, and release, it's so therapeutic. It just helps to just start, moving it out and through you, so that you can start to gain some sort of clarity.
Indeed. I mean, most people, including myself, have periods where I don't really know what I think and feel. I'm so caught up in the busyness and what I'm doing for other people that, if somebody was to say, how are you feeling? I go, fine, which is kind of basically, I don't know. I haven't got a clue. I'm too busy to think about it.
Just fine.
So and, in Britain and in America, we have the kind of culture where we're working hard. It's a kind of can-do culture. And, so, but what about taking time out, stopping, reflecting? It's not heretical. It's not, you won't get arrested for it. It's good to do that. Because the next stage in the transition is choice or crisis. So you really need to have time of reflection to make a powerful choice. And usually in a transition, it's a powerful choice. It's like a crossroads where, should I stay in this marriage or not? Should I start this new career or not? Or this new business or not? It's all those kind of choices, which are huge choices. It's not like, should I buy this brand of toothpaste or not? It's nothing like that. It's huge choices. So the second stage is choice or crisis. Either you make the choice or the universe will choose for you, or life will choose for you. And it's better if you make the choice, really. And of course, the thing I say about that is sometimes people feel the tension and make a bad choice just to get away from the tension. A classic example would be somebody going through a midlife crisis, which is a very powerful transition point, and going, you know what, that 25-year-old secretary looks so much better than my wife. I'm just going to dump my wife and go out with the secretary. Now that can be a very bad choice to make.
Yeah, that's rather impulsive, I'd say, and our society feeds into that quite a bit. In fact, oh my gosh, one of my other favorite people is to listen to is Dr. Christiane Northrup, and she puts things into great perspective, and like she'll say, I don't even want to hear you say that you're having a senior moment or that you're having a midlife crisis. What does that mean? When do we even know what is our midlife? And what came up for me, what you just shared, is just another time of transition. It's a shifting, and it tends, like you said, it tends to happen, especially when kids are leaving and all of a sudden you're alone with your spouse, and you start to examine things, and I'd say start to be more reflective rather than being impulsive, yes?
Yeah. There's a great film with Wayne Dyer, The Shift. Have you seen that film, The Shift?
Yes. I love Wayne Dyer.
He's brilliant. In that film, he kind of really relates the midlife crisis for men and women, and the study they did around the shift in values for men and women, and usually men are go-getters, producers, money earners the first part of their life. They're raising a family. But after the midlife, which I think astrologically comes around the Chiron return, 4950, the values shift to kind of more family, less I have to kind of run and prove myself. Now I want to actually spend quality time with family. For women, it's different. They've spent a lot of time, mothering and being with family. And after the midlife, they want to know, I want to do something for me now. That's the big shift for women. And of course, it's very general that. But I really like that. I thought Wayne Dyer pinned it down quite nicely, actually.
Well, and then it's meeting, and it's coming to that. Sometimes I don't use the word balance, because can anything really be in perfect balance? But in harmony, and to be, to communicate that with your spouse or your partner, because the roles do shift. And now with women, and I'm an example of that within our baby boomer generation, that I am now doing what I know I was always intended to do in my life. I have found my purpose, my true calling, and I'm so blessed for my husband who, what he shared with me was so profound. He said, what I see in you now is the same light I saw when I first met you. That this is what lights you up. You are, truly happy in what you're doing, and there again, if it's in relationships, I have found that if it's met with adversary, it really does. I would suggest that you really step into being even more in communication with one another. Why you were talking about resistance and people bumping up into resistance. Well, all of a sudden, the wife they knew is not the same person. Oh no, I'm fearful. Who is this person? And this happens quite a bit.
Yeah, it does. That's very classic, actually. I think that's a cause of a number of shifts and transitions in terms of relationships. Is when two people are growing at different paces, or one may not be growing and the other is growing and doing what they love, and the other one gets a bit fearful. But if you're both in conversation and one is supportive, or you're both supportive of each other, then that's brilliant. The relationship will deepen, and that's really great to hear you say that, Nancy. Actually.
Yes. Well, this has been my 5 years as well, and that's why I was talking to you earlier that this is a day of freedom, and this is I think a year of freedom and it's not the freedom to go and run away and proclaiming your independence, but freedom of choice, freedom of expression, and freedom to be you. The authentic you that you are. And what I love about your book is that you really do. It's profound in the way that you have written it, and then you, like I've got this page of the threshold of crisis. You put out the questions, and these. What I've learned from questions come answers, and even if they're the good, bad, or the ugly, you've got to answer those questions and be in your truth. Otherwise, it'll haunt you.
Yeah, good quality questions that we ask ourselves or someone asks us can often be the kind of trigger that kind of gets us moving in a good direction, actually, I think. And really the message I have in the book is that all transitions are for your ultimate good, even if they feel very difficult or challenging. There are all these stages, which is really the end of one phase of life and the beginning of another. But when we're going through that kind of death and release of an old phase of life, we can kind of really, I know in my case, I really wanted to hold on to my old life, even though it was kind of disappearing, my old identity and who I was as a kind of director of this company and a partner of this woman, and all of that was all kind of disappearing. And in the void of nothing new coming in, I was kind of like, Chase, well, can we just get back together or something, or try it again, or, there's all that going on, and it wasn't going to happen. So there is this kind of void in the middle of it that's kind of also challenging. I write about in the book, which is the recalibration, where it's like the caterpillar going into the cocoon. And of course, who knows what the caterpillar feels going into a cocoon, but for a human being going into a phase of the cocoon, it's going to be like, what's going to happen here? My old life's gone, now what? Maybe, it's all going to be downhill from here. But then that kind of butterfly, I think I read, was it Barbara Marx Hubbard wrote about that process, and she said when a caterpillar starts turning into a butterfly, there are all these cellular changes that the biology of the caterpillar thinks it's a kind of a foreign invader, and it starts attacking. So the immune system of the caterpillar starts attacking these new butterfly cells and destroying them until they're produced so fast that the old caterpillar's biology is overwhelmed and the new butterfly appears. And there's that old joke of two caterpillars. It was a cartoon I saw, I think it was on Facebook, two caterpillars kind of wiggling along the ground, and one says to the other, looks up and sees a butterfly flying overhead, says to the other, "You'll never get me up in one of those," which is the kind of joke, right? That's kind of like the transition process, really.
Yes. And one thing I learned is that before a caterpillar turns into a butterfly and it's in the cocoon, it actually goes upside down. And that's what we feel. Yes, that's what we feel. Like you just taught me something about the immune system and recalibrating all that. But that's what we're doing. And there's times that we feel like we are just dangling, upside down. You can't even, you can't, which way is up, that feeling. So, yes, there's great I always encourage people to study the different archetypes, and the butterfly definitely is quite the messenger for us all. And go back to that old movie, Butterflies Are Free. They have attained that sense of freedom, and that word has come up a few times here today. I do highly recommend your book. I mean, I've got my book here open to page 157, where you talk about recalibration, and I'm so on board with this. You write, it's a great space to develop a witness consciousness, and this is what I do. When you wake up, spend 5 minutes being present to yourself by noticing the natural rhythm of your breath. Yeah. How many years did I? Well, I had 3 children, so I had to bounce out of bed. There were lunches to be made, drive the kids to school, get to work, da 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 da. But we can all do that no matter what phase of life we're in. It's just a matter of choice, and this. Put the alarm on if you need an alarm, or if not, wake up a little earlier and spend time with yourself.
Yeah, that's one of the gifts, isn't it? If we're going through a challenging time, it presses all our buttons. But if we can really learn, to be mindful, to be the witness, even when our buttons are being pressed, then those kind of buttons start dissolving in us because they're no longer pressing our reactive side, And I think it's a great thing in myself. I notice I'm far less reactive to things now on the other side than I was 5 years ago, where I used to still have my buttons and, I hate that, But now I kind of go, that's such a small thing nowadays. After going through this huge process, I realize things have gone into a different perspective, and I think that's another gift of a transition. There can be big shifts, and we can learn major lessons like, being still and centered and not reacting to everything that goes on in the world. And there are many more lessons, of course, that we can learn.
Oh, absolutely. And a big word that you've gotten here too is being mindfulness, and so when you're washing dishes, how often do we do things on autopilot? Being really mindful. And for me, what I've shifted more into, because there again, as I shared, being a busy mom and a wife and all that, I had to hurry up and get dinner on the table. Now I'm more mindful when I go to the store, choose my food, when I'm preparing it, and the outcome is, I've made it with love, and I'm more mindful of all of that. And I know Oprah had someone on. I've got to find that show, because he was talking about mindful eating. And so, yes, everything in your life just starts to slowly, as you just said, what used to trigger your buttons, now it's like, okay, whatever, move on, carry on, as we say.
Yeah.
So,
and the other message of the book is the world is shifting. So, hey, we've got to shift as well, really. So it's not just that a few people are going through it. I think the whole world is going through a big energetic shift at the moment. And of course, you have to be kind of interested in spirituality to kind of be even looking at that as a possibility, that even though there's some parts of the world look quite dark, the world is going through a very powerful transition, and I believe the world will be a very different place in 50 to 100 years time, and there are a lot of people going through a spiritual transition now to really help birth a different world in a way. So that's one of the core ideas of the book as well.
You're absolutely right about that. And I'm quite certain you know who Jean Houston is, and I had the pleasure of meeting her not only in person, but having her on my show 3 years ago. And she was talking about this back then, and she said, we're going to look back and realize that we're living in a time of a renaissance, and just tremendous shifts. And she's just so much wisdom, and she's well traveled, well over 100 countries, and still very, very active. And I thought, wow, she's done so much work in the world, and I think she's 78 now, and she's out in the world, sharing these messages that are so profound. So pay attention to who's showing up. I thank you, and I thank so many people who are providing your books, or people are providing workshops or tools or whatever to help you really settle into yourself and being aware of this shift and what can we do about it. And just this last week, and it's just such a sad thing for me to even think about, Cecil the Lion. And the world is, they are stepping up with their voice, and to that, Jean Houston was saying bravo, because that is what creates the ripple effect. We don't need to be silent anymore. You know, we have a voice, and that's what I once again, within your book, I really appreciate that. I can't emphasize enough how valuable your book would be to my listeners to purchase. And speaking of which, would you share how they can purchase?
Yeah, sure. Well, on Amazon, you can get it through Amazon. Again, in America, I guess it's Amazon.com. Personal Transitions, Kindle version or a hard copy. And that's probably the easiest way, I think, for people in the States. But in Britain, you can also buy it through Findhorn Press website.
And
I think
you
that's
have
findhornpress.com.
You have a website as well. Correct?
Yeah, my website's stevenobel.com, and on that website, you can also, one of the things I do, what you do actually, Nancy, I interview a lot of authors, and there's a whole platform there of authors that I've interviewed, so if people want to download that, they're welcome to as well.
Well, see, there you go. We're spreading the message, and surprises always come up, and I did not know that about you. So, yes,